Hey guys, how you doing? This is Dan Faustel, Faustel Studios. We're going to be talking about how to render frames out of Unreal Engine. So we've built our scene. How do we get that frame built so we can bring it into Photoshop? So I'm going to be going over that on today's lesson. All right, so if Unreal Engine has a quick way of doing it, you could hit F9, you could do a screenshot. And that works great. Let me go over to the PIP. I've got the level loaded up here. If I hit F9, it's going to take a quick screenshot. And it works. It's a screenshot. The problem is it's only going to be at your screen resolution. So right now I'm running 2K monitor, so I'm rendering at 2037 by 1146. So it's just not going to be a very big file, but it looks okay. Now there is another feature here where you could go into the command and tell it to do a high-res shot, and then tell it a multiplication factor, so 2 or even 4 times as big. The problem is Unreal Engine's going to crash. That don't work too well. So we're going to be talking about another way to render out frames. So this is going to be Faustel Studios, and we're going to be talking about rendering out of Unreal Engine. Okay, so if the built-in screen capture doesn't work, what's another way that we can get this image pulled out? So what we're going to do, and down here it says no active level sequencer detected. So that's actually what we're going to be using. We're going to be using something called the sequencer and the movie render queue to render that shot for us. So let me get this up. So we're going to go up to cinematics here, and we're going to say add a level sequence. It's going to want to save that sequence, so we're going to save it as, spell things right here. So I'm going to save that as demo 2. So now we have down here is the sequence. Now, I'm going to bring in, over here with track, I'm going to bring in our cinematic camera actor. And sequencer will automatically render out 150 frames worth of data. And if you look over the 150 frames, they're pretty much all the same because we do not have a motion in our camera, which we could do in an advanced lesson, but on this one, it's just rendering that straight frame. The only difference from our previous ones is I've deleted out that picture of our model and the placeholder for the composition of our model. So now that I have this loaded into sequencer, I've told it where I want to go. And another thing you want to make sure, so I'm selecting camera actor here. I want to go in here and make sure that all these settings are off. Metering mode's manual. I've set the exposure compensation to make the shot how bright I want it. You can't use the automatic in some of the things we do here. I'm going to come up to cinematics. Or correction, sorry, we're going to go up to cinematics up here. And we're going to go to the movie render queue. So it's going to have our, let me delete this out. This is from a different, from a previous run of this. So I'm going to go to our new demo that we just made, that demo 2. It's going to tell me where it's going to save. What we're interested in is this unsaved config file. Now there's a couple things you can do here. Right away, it's going to want to render out to JPEG 8 bits, and that's not necessarily where we want to be. What we can do here is we can add in a couple of these modifiers. So I'm going to put in high resolution output. And I'm also going to put in this one called console variables. One sec, let me pull up the console variables and I'll show you why. Okay, so I've now got the website up. Basically, this has to do with the ray tracing. So on Unreal's Epic Games Unreal Engine docs here, and that's the website. I could put that in the description for you guys. It has this message about exporting media using ray tracing. So Unreal Engine makes use of ray tracing possible through the use of denoising techniques that may rely on temporal history. When using high-resolution tiling or when disabling temporal anti-aliasing, you may need to adjust the following console variables for better results. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these 4 consoles variables there. I'm just going to drag them over to my other screen so I can see them. So I'm going to grab that first one, going to come in here to console variable, and I'm going to paste. And then there's that 0 for the number. I'm going to grab that second one. I'm going to say copy. I'm going to say paste. That third one for the reflections, we're going to paste. And the fourth one's going to be for the shadow denoiser. And I'm going to paste that in there as well. All of them with 0. Basically just like it's saying right here, those 4 console variables with 0 as the value for each one. So now that the console variables are all set up there, I'm going to add one more thing, and that's going to be the anti-aliasing. So we are going to override the anti-aliasing from the sequencer down here, and we're going to use our own. Now, normally, if you're rendering a video or video game type thing, we have performance as a consideration. The computers have to be able to run the game. But since we're only trying to render one frame, we're not as worried about performance because the computer can sit there and work away for it a while and take its time to render that one frame for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this temporal sample count to 64. And we're going to leave anti-aliasing method on none since it's doing these 64 passes. So the warm-up, you could change this, especially if you're using particles. I believe this starts affecting things right here, but I'll leave a link for you guys to find out more information about this if you're interested. Now in the high-resolution output, see, where do we want to go here? Okay, found where I was looking for. It's actually in the output tab was the last thing I want to show. So the output directory is obviously where the file is going to go. The file name format is the format. Now the output resolution. So this is where I can tell it what size I want the file rendered at, and it's going to be able to render, I mean, I've seen pictures rendered out to 16K. It takes it longer, but it can do it. So what I'm going to be looking up is get exactly what 4K resolution here, and that's 3840 by 2160. So I'm going to come over here, 3840 by 2160 as our output resolution. And then we are going to do, we don't care about frame rate because we're not making a video. But we are going to, okay, yeah, so down under frames here, we want to say use custom playback range. So I'm going to click that. I'm not going to start with zeros because sometimes the first frame doesn't render quite right. But I can go to something like start with 7, end with 8. So we're just rendering that one frame. So it's going to, tell us all the information that we're currently working with. But all of our settings should be okay for what we're doing to get that 4K image rendered out. And if we're going to, I could show you a few different things. We can do it as a PNG sequence. Or we could also turn on that JPEG sequence and see what happens if we render both. Now, since we're currently doing OBS, I'm using video memory for OBS for this streaming. So I'm not quite sure if it's going to crash. So if it crashes, I'll be right back with you guys. And we're going to click Render Local. So what Unreal Engine is going to be doing now is it's going through those 64 subsamples of that one frame that we asked it to do, and it's producing frames. Now, the way it does multiple frames like that is Unreal Engine will actually break the image into 4 or more frames and render like 320 pixel frames or 480 pixel frames, make 4 of those, and then bring them all back together. But when you're all done with that, let me see if I can find the demo 2 and pull that up here. Okay, so here's the frame that we just rendered. This is going to be the JPEG sequence. So that's our 4K JPEG sequence there. So it actually looks pretty good. The tiles look good. The lighting looks good. I don't see much banding. And then the other one that we told it to render is the PNG sequence. So this is also 8-bit, but it's PNG, so a little bit less compressed. and see if we can notice anything. So a little bit in that church. Let's see how the JPEG looked again. So very similar. So between the JPEG and the PNG in this particular case, not too much difference. But from this point, I'm done with my Unreal Engine, and now I'd go ahead and bring that frame into Photoshop. So that's the real quick basics of how to render a frame out of Unreal Engine, so we can now bring it into Photoshop and start working with that frame and putting our composite together. If you guys are interested in hearing more about this and getting more in depth about what the settings do, let me know and I can go into more depth, but this is just to show you the basic process and where to start looking. Anyway, this is Dan Faustel, Faustel Studios. Hope we learned something. Catch you guys next time.